I had to do something discreet to get back at my kid's stepmother for being an S1VE. My kid's dad was verbally and emotionally abusive from before the wedding until a while after our second child turned 18, which by that time was half my life. Unfortunately, when the kids were 9 and 6, he married a woman who in some ways became even more abusive to the kids and me than he was being. I didn't want to do anything that would cause an outright war because I always did everything I could to keep things civil for the sake of the children, and TBH, I was kind of afraid of her, as were my ex-in-laws, my kids, and according to them also their dad to some extent. She was extremely heavy. And they're religious in a sect that requires women to dress very modestly, so over a period of about 6 months I ordered dozens of catalogs in her name from places that only sold petite and or really sexy clothing, edited. This was decades ago, so the other parents are long out of my life, and after enough therapy I stopped feeling the need to mess with either of them. As for why didn't I do something more to protect my children, my daughter's school called CPS once because of an altercation between her dad and her when he was picking her up from school one day. He had screamed at her and thrown her backpack at her, driving off, leaving her standing in the parking lot in her school uniform, a skirt, blouse and knee socks, while it was snowing. Even though he came right back, the school wouldn't allow him to take her until the situation had been sorted, but CPS said they couldn't do anything about it unless there was proof he had directly hit her. CPS has a much higher threshold for triggering an investigation than most people think, and emotional and verbal abuse are murkier than physical abuse and harder to prove because there's no physical evidence. At one point I did start the process of getting the kids a guardian ad litem to go to court for a change in legal custody, but they backed out because they were too afraid that the other parents would be even worse if they went to court and said they wanted to be with me full-time. And they were right, it would have been worse for all of us, but I was willing to be falsely blamed for manipulating them if it meant they'd be safer. The other parents never believed that anything they were doing was a problem for the kids, and if the kids ever tried to give them feedback they were told they were only saying that because I was brainwashing them and deliberately turning them against the other parents. For years afterwards my daughter tried to work out a mutually respectful relationship with them, and finally went no contact when she realized she was never going to succeed.